Hello guys, welcome back. In today's Microsoft Excel tutorials video, we are going to see a very important topic in Microsoft Excel VBA, and this topic is about the variable usage. That is, how can you create variable, what is a variable, and what is the usage of the variables in Microsoft Excel. So first of all, let us understand that what is a variable. A variable, as the name suggests, is something that holds varied values or variable values. Now suppose you have a container in which you can add any number of things. You add 10 apples to that container, then you take out one apple, then the value of that container changes. First of all it was 10, then when you take out one apple, its value was 9. So variable is just like that particular container which can hold a number of values, and you can just perform any kind of operations on those values, and you can use the value of the variable to as many places as you want. So that is the basic usage of a variable. It is called variable because its value can change n number of times, that is, as many times as you want you can change the value of the variable. So that's what is a variable. And if we talk about its usage, then variable is used, suppose you have a range of cells in which you want to provide a same value, then you need to just write the same thing again and again and again, but instead of that you can actually provide the value to a variable, and you can use that variable for that particular purpose. So let's see it with the help of an example. For better understanding, we have our workbook macro created. We have a sheet called sheet name, and let's just go and create a new module so that we are able to understand it in a better way. Okay, so let's go to the insert tab and insert a new module. Let's rename it as variables. So that's the name of our module, variables. Let's create a sub procedure also with the name as variables. So let's write the piece of code. Suppose what we need to do is in E1, E3, E6 we have to write programming knowledge. So what you can do is put in the range function, the cell is E1 dot value equals programming knowledge. That's what you need to write, right? Knowledge. Okay, then you can just copy this whole thing and paste it here and paste it here. The next value we had was E3 and then we had E6. So that's how you can work with it. That is, you can just copy paste, and in 3 places you have to write programming knowledge. Now if you just run this code, we have got programming knowledge in these 3 cells, that's we all know. But now we are asked to change its value, like we need to split the words programming and knowledge. So we just put a space, we just put a space, and we just put a space. So that is, we had 3 statements, so we put it 3 spaces. But what if we had 30,000 statements? So in that case we need to put 30,000 spaces. So that is a redundant work that we need to do, which is obviously of no use and requires lot of efforts. This is the place where variable comes. So you have to in this case just copy up this value, and you can just provide it to a variable. Say v is the name of the variable, put an equal sign, and within double quotes you can just paste this value programming knowledge. Now wherever you want to access this value, I want it in the cell, say H3, I want this value. So instead of writing the whole programming knowledge, what I do is I simply type v. Now if I just try to run it, you can see as soon as I run this line, then in H3 the value of v, that was programming knowledge, is now written. Simply you can just paste it as many times as you want. You can just copy this statement and you can paste it as many times as you want. And in the same places, like suppose I want in H7, now I want in H9, all this v, the value of the v would be pasted. Now if you just run this, then we have got the values at every place that we wanted. Now if you are asked to perform any kind of change, like you are asked to do this, that there should be no space between programming and knowledge, it should be a single word. So now you can just change the value of the variable v, and wherever the value of variable v is used, it would be changed automatically. If you just run it, then you can see at these 3 places the changes have reflected just by changing a single place, changing at a single place, that is changing at where the value of v was present. So this is very important when you are working with thousands of lines of code, which is generally the length of the code when you are working in a company. So you do not need to perform changes at n number of places, you just need to perform the change at a single place, and then all the operations would be done accordingly. So that's the usage of the variables in Microsoft Excel. Now there are certain operations also that can be performed on variables. Okay, so that in this video right now we discussed about the advantage of the variables. Now we would be seeing that what operations we can actually perform on the variables. Suppose we just write a particular function, or we write a particular piece of code that in range or F17, that's F17 cell. What do I need to do? Its value needs to be changed to programming knowledge 2 times. We need to write it 2 times. Then what we can do is simply write the letter v. It holds the value of programming knowledge. We can simply write letter v. We can put an ampersand sign, and again we can write v. Okay, actually this is the statement, but we need to provide spaces like v and v, like this. Okay, so what would happen, it would write the value of v, that is programming knowledge, and then it would using the ampersand operator, it would just concatenate it with the second value of v. If we just try to run it, then you can see in the F17 we have got programming knowledge and programming knowledge. That's how you can perform concatenation over the variable values, and this is very useful when we have like 2 values. Suppose in v, let's just create 2 new variables. In a we have something called YouTube. In the variable b we have something called channel, and in the variable c we have something called as a space. So this is what we have, and in the cell F13 we want to paste YouTube space channel. Then in that case you can perform or operations on these 3 variable values a, b and c to change it into a sentence. You can concatenate the values in that sense, like F13, and you can just put a dot, right, value. Then what you need to write is put an equal sign, first YouTube, that means a, then you need to concatenate it with c, that is a space. Then again you need to perform the concatenation operator with b, that is YouTube space channel. Now if you just try to run it, then you can see YouTube space channel is what we have got. So that's another usage of a variable. Now there is one more thing. If you want to use this particular combination of values in multiple places, then you can do that as well. So how can you go with it? You can just store this combination of values in another variable. Suppose you create a variable called d, and in d you just store these things. This is the whole value, and you can just store it in d. So instead of writing this thing every time, you just need to write the another variable, that is d. Now d would be holding the value YouTube space channel, and you want to write it here, you can simply write d, and when you run this piece of code, actually F13 is already holding this value, so let's change it to say F16, and now if we just run this value, you can see YouTube channel is present over here. So that's the usage of the variables. If you're trying to use the variable for a string value, you need to provide it in the double quotes, or you can just provide the value of the variables in the form of the variables. And also if you want to create a new variable, suppose e, and that's holding a number, suppose it's holding a number called as 1000. So what would happen is you can simply write this as well, like you just use a range function to provide the cell. D7 is the name of the cell where I want its value, dot value equals e. So that's how you can store numbers in variables as well. If you just run this code, then you can see 1000 is present in e. So if you want to use a numerical value, you need not provide a double quotes, but if you want to use a string value, you need to provide double quotes in the variables. So that's how you can work with the variables, and that's the usage of the variables. And that's all for the video. I hope you all have learned something new, and thanks for